Hey, Sub2ers, my name is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub2Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to. Now, occasionally we will cover other real estate investing topics, but it will always be something to help you with your business. Today is another episode in our Real Investor series where we feature real investors doing real deals and sharing real stories. These guys are investors doing deals all across the country, and they don't have any courses to sell you. They just have real tips and strategies and the things that are working today in their businesses and in their markets. They share them all, and these things can work for you too. So pay attention and take lots of notes. My special guest today is Deena Stivers. Deena is a real estate investor in Bowling Green, Kentucky. She's been investing for over 22 years. And hey, this is the only job she's ever had. She's been doing it full time the whole time. She is a specialist in a lot of different kinds of transactions. I'm not even going to try to cover that. I'm actually going to let her explain that stuff to you. So Deena, welcome to the Sub2Deals Show.
Well, thanks for picking me, William.
Well, I'm glad to have you on here. I'll tell you, you've been one of my best success stories here. I know I met you, 16, 17 years ago in a boot camp that I did in Macon, Georgia.
That's right.
So we had a good time at those things. I haven't done them in a while. I don't know. Well, with everything's going on now, I don't know if they would be the best option. But we used to have a good time at those things and shared a lot of information. And I'll tell you, you've been very successful. So I was really excited to have you on today and talk about the stuff that you're doing. So tell us a little about yourself, about your background, your family, and what you did before you started real estate investing.
Well, before I started real estate investing, I was just a mom. But I knew I wanted to be in real estate when I was 18, William, as soon as I got out of high school. But I went on to college and did, just regular, actually I studied elementary education just because truthfully, I felt like at 18, no one would trust, 18-year-old kid with that kind of purchase. It's such a big thing in people's lives. So I went on down a different path just because I didn't really feel like I could do that at 18. And then when I had two boys, and then at 30, when I was getting divorced, I went to real estate school and to be an agent. And I can remember so much of what that man, of course, back then we went to class in person and you learned so much more in person, but I can remember Ward Elliott's voice during certain parts of that course telling me, and I can remember him talking about equitable title and it was just lights went off for me when equitable title got talked about, because that was a concept that had never even occurred to me, and it's life-changing if you can figure out what that is. But anyway, so now 22 years later, I had a daughter after that, and now my boys are grown, and my daughter was 16 last week, and I got married in May. It's a crazy life, but here we are.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you said you knew that you wanted to be an investor or be in real estate at 18. What got you interested in real estate?
Carlton Sheets, baby. It was the only thing we could watch on TV. Hello. It was just no money down. Figure that out,
I know, it's amazing, really, the number of investors that I talk to. Well, not so much the 25-year-olds anymore, but,
right.
The people our age or older, a little younger, that everybody knew who Carlton Sheets was. He was the original guru. And late night TV, if you were up, past 10 o'clock or Sunday mornings, he was always on Sunday morning.
Yes.
With the palm trees swaying and the blue water.
Yeah, it was all in Hawaii or somewhere that looked like Hawaii, all their award shows or interviews.
Seen him dozens and dozens of times. And it's one of those things, guys have that thing. I don't know about girls so much, but there can be certain commercials or infomercials. If you're walking through the living room and that one's on, it just stops you in your tracks and you start watching. And Carlton Sheets was always that way for me. most amazing people on there. I mean, that literally didn't look like they had more than 2 or 3 brain cells, but they were, I bought this house and this house and this house. And I said, man, if those guys can do it, I can too.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So yeah, Carlton Sheets has got a lot of people going. Of course, Carlton Sheets died, I think, earlier this year, or maybe it was last year. And a lot of people don't know this, but his course is actually online now at CarltonSheets.com.
Oh my word, I didn't know. Guess what I'm going to do after this?
Now, I mean, you can read it all, and of course you can't listen to the tapes. I had the cassette tapes, and I used to listen to those. So you said you've been investing for 22 years. You went to real estate school and got your license, I guess, and I guess you were an agent maybe for a little while.
I did, and selling real estate, it was exactly where I needed to be, because I got my license when I was 30. I had 2 little boys. I refused to send them to daycare, so I only sold real estate Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8:30 in the morning till noon, and on the every other weekends when my ex had my boys. And I know this sounds crazy, but I sold 53 houses the first year I did that. It was something that came so naturally to me. And, I've always known it's a people business, not a house business. And so it's those connections that I'm good at. So in the state I was in at the time, you only had to be an agent for a year before you could be a broker. So as soon as I qualified, I went and I got my broker's license and bought a RE/MAX franchise. A few years later, though, I had, a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old who were eating Pop-Tarts for dinner, and their mom was working at 11 o'clock at night. And one day a friend of mine took me to a sheriff's sale with her. She was a female investor, and she took care of her family flipping houses. She might only do 2 a year, and she didn't live high on the hog, but it was how she took care of her family. And I bought a house that day. I had not planned to. I paid $24,000 for a house, and 3 weeks later, I sold it for $42,000, and I never touched it. Well, it was at that time, Deena figured out that at heart, she was an investor, not a broker. And so, it took a little time, but I ended up selling the RE/MAX to my partner and just being an investor.
Well, we joke about it all the time. We talk about agents that don't invest. They basically work for tips.
Right. Exactly.
Investors make the money, so I mean that's where it's at. But, yeah, so it didn't take you too long to figure it out.
No, as soon as that was crazy, and especially, now here people probably the average selling price of a house is probably $300,000 here, and so some of these agents are making really good money. But at the time, I was living in a place where the average house sold for $70,000. So even if I didn't have to split my 3% with the broker, it wasn't very much to start with. And so that $18,000, that was insane, and it was just pushed me down that road.
I know exactly what you're talking about. When I got started investing, I was in the restaurant business, and worked 60, 70 hours a week. And I remember the first house that I bought subject to and sold it on a land contract, and, collected a $14,000 down payment. And, I looked at that money and I said, I had to work, and I made 50, 60,000 a year, but still, in just a week or two, I made the same amount of money that it would take me a couple of months to make in the restaurant business. And, I knew then that I had to get out of that. And start investing. Exactly what you're talking about. So, well, tell us about your business model. Now, I know this may take a while because you do a lot of things, but I know we talked briefly about your specialty, which I think you call clear and title, or you fix titles.
I fix titles. Now, I do a little bit of subject too, and truthfully, I've told you several times, I really want to grow up and be just like you. I want to switch over. I want to do your model exclusively. It sounds like a dream to me. I don't, I'm a deal maker. And if I find them, that's what I do. I love truth. So, I love title issues because they can get you crazy discounts on property. And judgment liens are very good, especially if they're at the end of their statute of limitations time. And, right now I only have 6 properties that I hold subject to. Every one of them has some sort of title issue that will be automatically, just by default, fixed in the next 2 years. One of them has 2 liens that total $32,000 that are going to expire in about 18 months. The man I bought the house from totally agreed that I could let them expire. And just so you know, if the creditors started making noise or causing problems, I would settle these and pay them. I would never, cause my seller any problem. But basically, that's another $32,000 I get to make just by letting those suckers expire. So that house, I did give him his equity, which I consider to be about $15,000. And, the mortgage left on it is 64. The house is worth about 189, and it would appraise for that today. I got this pretty much right at the beginning of COVID. And so I had some people that had been calling me, and they didn't really, they didn't have a big down payment. So they, at the beginning of COVID, when everything was getting crazy, and, I'm in a good spot, it's been so long for me that I did have that $15,000. And so, I let them put $5,000 down, and they've been paying monthly ever since, $1,300 a month. I probably make $450 a month on it. And, I truthfully, I want them to stay for the 2 years because, these people keep that house. It's immaculate. Okay. Even I have to take my shoes off when I go see them. Okay. And so, they're taking excellent care of my house. They're paying down my balance. And in a couple of years those liens are going to expire, and I'm going to make $100,000.
Right. We have those questions come up occasionally in the Sub2 forum where someone will say, I've got, is this lead any good? The house is worth 100, the mortgage balance is 60, but it's got $30,000 in liens on it. Blah, blah, blah. And I always say, absolutely buy that house. Let those liens just lie. Because depending on what type it is, what your laws are in your state, they may not be able to renew. It may be a short time thing. And most liens just expire. People that have a car repoed, something like that, it goes through the process, the judgment process, the lien filing process, and then it's just forgotten. And if you can hang on to that house either as a rental or whatever the case may be until that period of time, if you know how to work that stuff, that's just like somebody writing you an extra check.
Right. Well, see, and the man I bought this house from is elderly. I think he was like 78. And so they can't garnish his checking account if his only income is retirement and Social Security. So that's not really a factor. The only way they could cause me problems is to try to foreclose on this house. And, and they never do that. You just don't see that happening.
Most people don't understand that liens there is a method in most places for a lien to be perfected and foreclosed, but most people just don't know the law and how it works.
Right.
That's just a great example of how you can get paid by what you know.
Yes.
If you'll just take the time. That was one of the things that I did when I invested locally in which I understand from our conversation, that's what you're doing. You work in your immediate area. You don't try to, branch out across the country. But when you're local and you can just focus on the state and the local level stuff, I used to order a lot of legal books for Georgia. I knew the laws on a lot of things.
Right.
And most people just don't. Even even people that file liens or mechanics liens, gosh, they're a big opportunity. Mechanics liens are. Most of them aren't valid. And they don't, a contractor will file it and walk away from it because the expectation is the homeowner will try to refinance or sell, and that's when they'll get paid. But if they've got
here, a mechanics lien is pretty much, I mean, the initial mechanics lien is just a notice that you owe somebody money. And here, that expires in 12 months unless they go to all the trouble of suing that person and getting a judgment. If there's no actual judgment, it's gone in a year. So it doesn't really matter to start with.
But, especially beginning investors who don't know, they go out, they get something under contract, they go do a little research. Oh my gosh, there's mechanics lien for X. Now I can't do anything with this, and they walk away.
Right.
But they just need to educate themselves a little bit on that. So you're focusing primarily on properties that have lien issues.
I do.
And cleaning those up.
And I don't really even know how it started, except that, all these years later, I have different people who call me about a house they need to get rid of that I've dealt with them years ago. So I end up with these situations and trying to fix them. And I love that. I mean, an affidavit of descent is my favorite document in the whole world. It just is like opens doors. It's crazy. I love intestate estate distribution, because if it's intestate, then the real estate, at least here in Kentucky, can transfer without a judge's order as long as there's a valid affidavit of descent on file. So I love those.
Right. I know that sounds interesting. I think the longer you're an investor, the more interested you become in the little known aspects and the what I call the subterranean market.
Right.
The things that most people don't know to work in, whether that's partial interests, things like that. One of my favorite deals that I talk about from time to time is one that I did that had several siblings that had all inherited, and they had one that still lived in the house that wouldn't move, wouldn't pay, wouldn't do anything. And the other 4 were so fed up with the situation that they just wanted out.
Right.
And so you take a house that's worth $200,000 divided by 5, theoretically each heir had a $40,000 interest, but a partial interest is worth much less than the whole. So if you can buy up those partials for $10,000 a piece, and then go knock on the door and go, hey, buddy, I own 4/5 of this house, and you're going to have to get out or sell to me.
Exactly.
Or buy from me.
I'm doing 2 like that right now. I mean, not as ugly as you just did, but I mean, I have one I'm doing right now, and it's these people get in the craziest situations, and so many times they're trying to do the right thing when they do it. But I mean, I'm working with one couple now who, I don't know, 10 years ago bought a house, and they didn't have all the down payment money. So the woman's mom gave them $3,000 for their down payment. Well, they put her name on the deed. Okay. Well, this old lady dies a few years later without a will. Well, now the problem is that the couple who really owned the house now only own half of it, except that the woman had 5 children. The lady of this is only one of them. So the lady who died owned half of that, and her 5 children owned, 20% of her half, which is 10% of anyway. So the wife that lives in this house, they only own 60% of this property. But she's so fed up with this thing that she's done my affidavit of descent. She signed my deed. I own 60% of this property right now. And the other 4 heirs live in states everywhere. So it shouldn't really be too hard for me to get them all to sign. But so far, I haven't even contacted them. She just gave me their contact information yesterday. And the problem with that is that these families fall apart, and she hasn't talked, her siblings aren't talking to her. So it's for me to put this all together and get this. But anyway, I don't think it should be too hard. So I'm working on that one. And I did one a couple weeks ago that was a crazy situation. There were three heirs. A sibling died, and the only heirs, according to the law of descent in the state of Kentucky, were her siblings, and there were three of those. They lived in different states. She had died 3 years ago, and nobody's doing anything. Well, I will say that years ago, William, I always try to think things out and make people really fair offers for their equity. Well, then a couple of times I made crazy offers and people accepted anyway. So most of the time, the offers that I give these people are crazy, and they accept more times than not. And so in the past few weeks, I did this one. It cost me $6,000, $2,000 per sibling. And there were some old tax liens and some code violations. But all in, I was at less than $19,000 for this house. And a few weeks later, I sold it for $60,000. And I mean, see, that's the thing with these situations, these title things, because people think there's nothing they can do about this. And that one wasn't even that messed up. I just needed an affidavit of descent. I mean, they just really needed an attorney, and they never got one.
Well, and and even attorneys will tell you, oh man, this is just really a mess. I don't know what we can do about this. I don't know how we'll fix it. Or I've heard that in my beginning investing days. I tried to buy a house from a fellow that had actually, there were two brothers that when their dad died, he left one of them a life estate, and there were some other things there. And then, since typically, like, I learned a lot about life estates at that point. Women, after a certain age, it's typically, they can be signed off on because they can't have children typically after a certain age, or men can father until they die. So the possibility of another heir or something along those lines, and it just got really messy and ugly.
Right.
And those things can be really complicated, but that's where the money's at.
Yeah, it is. I've done a couple life estates this year too. And really all you have to do is get the person who's going to inherit the remainder, which is the property after the person dies. You just have to get both. You just have to get all the parties to sign. That's it. It's not like anyway.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And you're talking about making those offers, making a fair offer. To me, a fair, this is the way I've always looked at that. I'm there to negotiate in my best interest. The person I'm negotiating with, I have to assume they're negotiating in their best interest too. If they accept my offer, they're okay with it because I don't have a gun to their head when I make it.
And I would never, these people, I never lied to them, okay? If they had asked me specific questions, I would have told them whatever the actual numbers were and whatever, but that's just not the situation at all. I contact them after all these years, wanting to buy this house, and I had bought one from their family years ago, which helped me too. And, said, this title's all messed up. There had been a tax foreclosure filed, so basically I had this pending foreclosure, and it was a tax foreclosure. And here that doesn't really mean too awful much, but, and there were all these codes violations. Well, I could, and truthfully, I didn't know what they all added up to at the time, but I was going to allow $6,000 for these people, and they were just happy as they could be. No one ever asked me point blank, how much was I buying this house for? And so since I never want to do anything that's, sketchy, we did a quitclaim deed, so it didn't specify how much I paid for the house. Simple as that.
Well, going back to the offer that you make people, I say if you don't blush when you make an offer, you're offering too much.
Right. You can't really make eye contact for very long after you throw something like that out there.
Along with those lines, I say if I make an offer, I want to hear a no, because that means I've gotten them past their bottom dollar.
Right.
If they say yes too quickly, I offered too much. Make the best deal that you can for yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of these people that you're contacting them out of the blue. They never knew they even had an interest in something. So, it's found money for them. So that's great. So tell me, Deena, what would you say, especially with this twist on what you do, what are your best sources for leads? I mean, are you digging around at the courthouse, or which I suspect is how you find some of the stuff you do, but tell us, what's your best source for leads to do these deals?
Well, if I'm looking for a source, I don't know. I think I manifest these things, but I love codes. I love code violations when they file those. Because see here, if I can fix the codes, people love me because they have these files that go on for years and years. And if I can get one of their files closed, I mean, a lot of times, because they'll let somebody's balance go up to $10,000, $15,000 before they even consider starting a foreclosure on them for that kind of thing. Well, if someone owes the city here $15,000 in code violations, after the first few violations, a lot of the fines they're putting on their tab are just punitive. And so if somebody owes $15,000 and I'm going to clear the file for my friends down at the city, they will figure out what the process has actually cost them, what the actual mowing costs, what the actual demolition costs, that kind of thing, and write off any of the fines that are punitive. So like I bought one house with $8,600 worth of code violations and they let me pay $1,700 and release the whole thing. And so many times anyway, that's one of my favorite things. But truthfully, if you said something, you like to ask people the question of if they needed to buy a house in the next 24 hours, what would they do? Well, the first thing I would probably do is go find all my yellow pads and call some of the people that I've been needing to call for the past 6 months that I just haven't followed through with.
Deena, you need REI Blackbook. Let me tell you, I operated with the yellow pad for 20 years. You need to get some of these people on follow-up. I know exactly what you're talking about. It goes down on a piece of paper, call Joe back, and then that yellow pad gets thrown up wherever, because we buy these things by the case. I know exactly what you love. That's right. So I get what you're saying so what you're saying is investors need to make friends with the code people at the courthouse.
Oh, for sure. I've even bought houses. Like when they come across a situation, they'll call me. Well, I think I've sent you one once. I was in Louisville one day and I get a call from the codes guy. And, I figured out a long time ago, I'm not the only person he calls, but I am at least one of them. So on my way back from Louisville, I called this lady and talked to her. And the codes guy saying she wants to give her house away, blah, blah, blah. Well, I call her on the way and it tells me that somebody is coming to look at her house tomorrow at 1:00. And I'm like, well, okay. But as soon as I get back to Bowling Green, can I come see you about 3? And she said, yes. So I went straight to the house. I made the deed. Mm-hmm. I went to the bank and I got $2,500 and I went to the house with my notary and bought that house before anybody else could buy it. And it's just what you do.
You can't steal in slow motion, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I got a call from a realtor a few weeks after that. And she said, one of my clients had an appointment to see that house the next day. And anyway, they knew I stole it from them.
And you said, well, they were disappointed, weren't they?
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great story. Hey, listen, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Deena, this has been really great. I love this information. When we come back, she's going to share with us her favorite tools that she uses in her business that help her, like yellow pads, I guess, and things like that. So you guys stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Sub2Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Hey Sub2ers, have you been trying to learn how to invest in real estate? It can take you years to learn the ropes on your own. How many people do you know who have been looking into real estate investing for years, but have never bought a single house? Do you have shelves full of courses but lack the courage to get out there and close on that first deal? Are you tired of so-called coaches who always seem to have just one more thing to sell you that you absolutely must have to be successful? Are you tired of trying to piece it all together with YouTube videos and free forms found on the internet? Is that really any way to build a business? William Tingle has been coaching real estate investors all over the country for over 16 years. And if you are ready, he can show you how to buy all the houses you want, anywhere you want, without ever having to ask a banker for one thin dime. Contact William today at Sub2Deals.com and schedule your free 30-minute strategy session. Talk it over, and if you think you're finally ready for success, he'll get you going. Back to the show, the Sub2 Deals Show, with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub2ers, we're back with Deena Stivers. She's an investor in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and she's been sharing with us how she runs her business and some of the amazing things that she's doing out there. Deena, when we left, you were going to tell us about any tools that you use in your business that help you, whether that's lead generation, follow-up, research, that sort of thing. So what do you use in your business that helps you get deals closed?
As far as tools go, I guess I think some of my best tools are just personal things and the way I handle people at the door. I mean, obviously anybody who's doing distant investing or virtual, you're not going to meet people at the door, but it's by far the best way to meet people if you're local and you can. And, I guess one of the things I figured out a long time ago is, even when I was selling real estate 20 years ago, if there was something negative going on, if I never stopped talking, the negative passed much easier if I stopped talking and people got to focus on whatever the issue was. And so a lot of times I feel like, and I have a son who's considering doing what I'm doing. And I have realized that there are a few things I will say to people when I meet them. And I don't know these people, but you want to make friends. And so I think that everybody needs to come up with a few little, pieces of conversation that they can throw into a conversation that always lead to a positive interaction with this person. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to tell y'all what I do. And William, this is the first time I've ever said this out loud to anybody, but let me tell you what I do at the door. Somehow, you're talking to these people, and somehow I will throw in that I am 52 years old and I've never seen anything like this before, or some sort of thing about how old I am, because it sounds so bad, but they always automatically go into some sort of little speech about they never would have thought that, and then they'll tell you what they would have guessed and blah, blah, and anyway, it takes them down this little thing, and you've just had this friendly little chat with them. And you can do that if that's not your thing. I mean, you can do it after, if you're out knocking on doors because your kids have been on snow days for the past 7 days. I mean, you say, even in the snow, I had to get out and knock on doors because they're driving me crazy. I mean, you can force the conversation into something that's more, these people better than they are, and they'll do it all the time. But like I said, my son's considering this, and I understand that the girl thing's not going to work for him like it works for me. And so he's going to have to come up with some different ways. And of course, he's 22 and young and cute, and he doesn't look threatening or anything. So they will answer the door. And, I was thinking about one of the last people I talked to, and she was like a grandma type. And so I told him, he was actually sitting in the car waiting for me one day after I stood up there talking to this lady at her back door for like 25 minutes. He's like, geez, Mom, what'd you say to her? And so I'm telling him about it, and then I told him, well, he couldn't do what I did, but if I was him and I was going to do that, this is what I'd do. I'd somehow swing the thing back to a granny and you tell her that nobody makes fried corn biscuits and pie like your granny, and that you have never walked in your granny's door, that she hadn't made you a pie, and this woman is going to automatically love you, and talk about that for a minute. And the more they'll talk positive about to you about just random things, the closer you are to a yes. These people, if you can make them like you, I mean, sometimes you want people just to sell you their house just to do it for you too. I mean, I do.
Right. Oh yeah. And if they like you, they're much more likely to do business with
Right.
you. I mean, even if somebody else offers more, that and you'll hear this
Right.
through the years, and we've been doing this for 20 years. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do.
When they'll say, so and so came by, I talked to him, and he offered me a little more than you, but I like you.
Right. Exactly. That happens a lot. Yes.
And it all starts with being totally non-threatening.
Right.
Just like what you said, when you approach the door, the way you're dressed, the way, your mannerisms. I've knocked on a million doors in Georgia and always did it in some sort of polo, shorts,
right.
Whatever. I didn't dress too sharp. I didn't drive too nice a vehicle, and I didn't try to talk too smart.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, which is easy for me because I'm not very smart.
Whatever.
I mean, it's just easy to do, but that goes a long way in just, people not, because, most of these people that you're dealing with, especially in the sub-2 arena, they're dealing with situations that are hard.
Right.
And, they got people calling them, trying to collect money or fussing them out, or the divorce lawyer, or
right.
whatever it may be. You may be the only friendly face they've seen this week.
Right. Right.
It really goes a long way. You're right. The biggest tool that you have is your ability to connect with people and build some rapport very quickly. So you're absolutely right about that. Most people think in terms of technical tools, but I'm glad you brought that up because they're important, but they're not the primary thing.
Right. Well, and I find too, kind of connected to what you said, so many people don't have anybody to talk to. And usually when some sort of issue's going on with the house, there's somebody that's bearing the burden of that emotionally more than everybody else. And, a lot of time, and they don't have anybody to talk to. And so I know you've told people, there's a spot where you just let them talk. And that's so important, just to let them talk, especially because not just there, it makes them feel good, it makes them close to you. I mean, you're building a bond with this person if you listen to them. But there's also a whole lot in negotiations. If you throw out an offer and it stunned them so much they can't talk for a minute or two, don't talk first. The person who talks first is going to lose. So just let them think and talk, let them respond before you change your offer or do anything. I mean, because usually the person who talks first loses.
Well, what they say about you've got two ears and one mouth, and if you use them in proportion, do more listening. Most people are so uncomfortable with a silence, they'll try to fill it.
Exactly.
Just let them chew on the offer for a minute. And, a lot of times they'll come back with, well, that's not what I expected, but I think it'll work.
Right.
It can be shocking. I know I made an offer one time on a little house in Warner Robins, Georgia, and that lady drove for hours. Long story, and I won't get into it. But I offered her, I honestly had to turn away when I made her the offer. We were standing outside, and I offered her an insanely, we were talking less than $10,000 for a house that was fully rentable. And I made her the offer. I said, ma'am, I think the best I can do is about blah, blah, blah. And I just turned away. And she stood there for a second, and then she looked at her husband and said, what do you think? And he said, well, it's your house. And she said, well, it'll work. And I couldn't believe it, man. I almost laughed out loud, but you just never know. So tell us when, and I know you're not exclusive on sub-2s these days, and that's okay. But when you do find a sub-2 deal in particular, what are your criteria in evaluating that thing as far as, what you're looking at as far as equity or cash flow? Do you have a specific thing that you're looking for?
Well, I really, this is so bad. First, you started that question. The first thing, the real answer is, well, if I want it, I'm going to buy it. Okay, so basically, if I want it, that's the most important thing. I won't lose money on them every month, but truthfully, I mean, I like to own them. If the long game is good for me, it really doesn't matter that I get. Well, I mean, I always make $300 a month at least on one, but I don't really care about too awful much equity to start with. I mean, for the most part, I usually get more equity than a lot of the models are where you're only marketing to pretty houses, because I don't just market to pretty houses. So I come up with some different deals. Like I said, I still want to grow up and be just like you and switch over. But I just want to own them. And to me, Sub2 is just really something that keeps me from having to go finance something, because I finance a bunch. I do everything, but it just makes it easier to close it fast before these people can change their mind.
Oh, gotcha. Listen, you don't want to be me. It ain't easy being me. But I do. I know what you're talking about. You're more of a transaction engineer, and I did that for years and years and years. And I only went to a cookie cutter because I had to when I left the
Right.
country. I didn't feel like I could deal with contractors and other aspects from long distance. I mean, I'm sure you can, but I really wanted to simplify my life. And so that's why I just really distill things down to a very fine point, and said I only want pretty houses that need no work, and I don't
Oh,
care
I
about
do too.
no work, and where I can just sign a contract to buy, sign a contract to sell, put somebody in that house, walk away.
Right.
And so that's really why we made the change. But I still fight uh, the desire. If somebody brings a deal to you and it's less than perfect, but it's got a couple of moving parts, and you want to do something with it, and I just really have to fight that off because
What's funny about that is there have been a couple of times when I've just been accused that I only did a deal because I was just showing off. And I mean, I like that. I mean, so for me, I mean, I love the money. Don't get me wrong, but as much as anything, it's about the game still for me. I like the game.
yeah. Oh, I totally get what you're saying. It's the deal making. It's the taking something that's, especially with what you're doing with the title situation, ugly titles, and I even have thought about that, using that as part of a marketing thing. You see the we buy ugly houses,
Right.
we buy ugly titles,
Right.
or we like title problems and that sort of thing. But
Well, that sounds
I
like a
mean,
great idea.
that's what I mean. And most investors don't know how to handle it. They don't, and that's really where the money's at. So I get what you're doing, and it's great. Uh, Speaking of that, and you give us a couple of examples already, but can you give us an example, maybe another one, of a deal that you're working on right now that's sort of the typical thing that you do?
I don't know. You can't put me on the spot. It's like, what happens when people say, Deena, are you working on any houses? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, well, what? And you're like, I can't think of one. And then you get home and you can think of 14. Well, yes, I can. I do have one that has been just, well, and it's not typical. I shouldn't even tell you about that. I mean, but it's a probate, and somebody had gone in and basically stripped the house of everything, flooring, baseboard, electrical wires, and everything. And it's taken about a year to actually get somebody inside to get a real value on that place, because that'll be something that they settle for less than's owed. So I guess technically that's a short sale. I haven't done one of those in years, but that's one I'm working right now. Let's see, what else do I have right now? I have one right now that is I'm gonna meet these ladies here in a day or two, and it's actually a life estate. And so the lady who gave the life estate to her daughter, both the daughter and the mother are gonna sign. And so I'm paying them $35,000, and I've got a buyer for 50 who's ready to go. So I'm going to do that one. I don't know. I'm sure there's a whole bunch more.
In short sales, woo, it's been years and years and years since I've been involved with a short sale. And I tell people, anytime they get brought up, I tell them I would rather straddle and slide down a razor blade than do a short sale.
No shit. Telling you. But I had somebody call me a couple weeks ago, and he's abandoned his house and he needs a short sale. Well, I made up the trust. I've done everything. I already own this house. I haven't recorded any of that because I don't want any mess if I can't figure it out. But I mean, I'm going to see if I can fix it for him. See, because I just never tell anybody no.
Well, you probably should brush up on that short sale stuff, because I have a feeling next year,
coming.
Oh man, it's going to be a tsunami. It's
sure is.
I know. Don't know about Bowling Green so much. Most, we're in 30 markets in the United States right now. And I'd say out of those 30, a good 25 are just chugging. I mean, they're nice appreciation, things continuing to climb, short days on market. It's tough out there. Here in Colorado, the average house is on the market for about 5 days.
Right.
20% appreciation.
Right.
You can't even target VAs here, because they buy a house for $300 last year. It's worth $350 this year. They're able to get orders, sell it, make a profit, pay the agent, and move.
Exactly.
Typically VAs.
See, for the most part, that's pretty much why I don't do exactly what you do here all the time, because our houses here went from $110 a square foot to $140 a square foot, like almost overnight. It's just been crazy.
But when this forbearance stuff is over and the eviction moratoriums and the foreclosures, we went from having 75 to 100 foreclosures filed a month here in this county to one a month.
Right.
Yeah, well, they're coming. They're just delayed. They're just being backed up. So you figure 10 months of that come January. You know what I mean? 1,000 houses come up for foreclosure at one time, and and carrying on over, it's going to be a bloodbath out there. So short sales might not be. I don't know. That is just so much work. And I don't know. They may be easy to move next time, though. Who knows? So, and I'm scared to ask you this question. Tell us. Think about your most unusual deal that you've done. The one with the most moving parts. And
I thought about this earlier, because you said something about this in an email, and I know exactly which one this is. This is crazy. So I'm in Bowling Green. I'm in Warren County, Kentucky, and Louisville, because that's the way we say it here, is Jefferson County, Kentucky. And of course, it's the biggest city. It has tons of foreclosures. So 2 years ago, there's like 70 houses on the foreclosure list there. But for the most part, you can get all the information online. And I had done all the research on a whole bunch of these houses. And one of them that shouldn't have been going to sale, the judgment was $41,000, and it was probably worth $125,000. Easy, okay? And it was still going to sale, at the end of the week. They do their sales on Fridays. And I had talked to these people a couple of times, and I had talked to the wife once, and she put me off. Well, on Thursday before the sale, she calls me, and she wants to do my deal. Okay. Well, in Jefferson County, they will let you, whatever the judgment is, because I didn't have time to deal with the bank. Whatever the judgment is, if you deliver that money to the Master Commissioner's office before the sale date, they will stop that sale for you. So it was $41,000. Fortunately, that day I had $41,000. So I went to the bank and got a money order. No, I got a cashier's check for $41,000. It was already too late that day for me to get to Louisville, get everything signed, get everything filed, because I had to go to the Master Commissioner's office and the Circuit Clerk's office in order to stop this sale. So I went here to my bank and got everything I needed Thursday afternoon. Then I went home and I made all the documents, the deed, the power of attorney, everything. And you're going to think this is crazy. I have this little girl that notarizes for me. And at the time, her daughter was 3. Okay. So the master commissioner sale up there is at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is 8 o'clock my time. And it's a 2-hour drive up to there. And before that, I had to get with these people, get everything signed and notarized before I could even go, because I'm not going to hand over $41,000 if it's not for sure. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm at my notary's house picking her up, and she didn't have a babysitter. So we put her 3-year-old in the back of my truck at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive to Louisville and buy this house, stop this sale. We get 20 minutes up the road, and the wife calls me saying that she's going to need to sign for her husband because he's in the hospital with a knee surgery or something. And I'm like, listen, Kim, he has to sign. So you let me know where he is and we'll go there immediately after I meet you at the donut shop, because she was going to work. Anyway, so that's when she admitted to me that he didn't know anything about any of this, that she had let the house go into foreclosure. And he didn't know she had even been talking to me, and she just knew I'd never get him to sign. Well, I'm at Cave City, Kentucky, and I'm thinking, okay, do I turn around and go back to Bowling Green, or can I pull this shit off? Well, I went on to Louisville. I'm meeting her I'm at her donut shop at 5:30. Which is 6:30 her time, 5:30 my time, 6:30 in the morning. And she's signing. I'm like, okay, where is he? Well, he was out delivering donuts for this donut shop. She works to all the Krogers up there. Well, of course, he's at the Kroger that's the farthest away, but she figured out where he was going to be. And I drove next. I went to that Kroger, and this very nice man immediately signed all my papers, and my notary was there so then I had that. I didn't have to file that immediately. I owned the house. Now I did end up at the end of the story recording that day. So after that, I had to get to the master commissioner's office. I had to give them that money. They had to give me a time-stamped paper that I had to get recorded at the circuit clerk's office before 9 a.m., which was when the sale started. Well, the master commissioner's office is 3 blocks from the circuit clerk's office, but it's morning and traffic's everywhere. I ran, okay, my 52-year-old butt ran 3 blocks and clocked that paper in at 8:58, okay? So they couldn't sell that house anymore. I turned around after that, and I'm doing this like I just won a race. Well, these people, the employees at the office didn't know what had happened, but they're clapping for me anyway. So I stopped that sale like a crazy woman.
You can't steal in slow motion.
That's exactly right.
That's what these new guys don't understand. I mean, they don't remember when you drove for dollars all week, and then you went to the tax assessor's office to look up individually on the computer the new addresses for people that owned these empty houses.
Right.
So they get online now and they do all of this stuff. And man, we had it hard back in the beginning times. So, yeah, that's great. That's a great story. So tell me.
We walked uphill to school both ways, didn't we?
in 6 feet of snow.
Uh-huh.
So you bought this house for $41,000, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what's it worth? I mean, what was your profit?
Well, I mean, it needs some repairs, and let me tell you the rest of the great story about that house. Okay. So I did all that, and that morning I had never been in this house. Okay. So that morning, so I didn't have time, and that was Friday. Well, I called this lady, and my son was living in Louisville. My oldest had graduated from UK, and he'd moved to Louisville for his first job. And he kind of wanted a house. And so that was really why I wanted the house, thinking that he'd want it. So I set it up with her to go Monday after he got out of work. And we were going to go look at this house. I can't even believe I forgot this part of the story. We go there and she calls me. She meets me outside and she says, there's something I didn't tell you. Okay. Well, we go in this house and we go down in the basement, and back in the corner of this basement is a full-size fence, okay? She's got a pig. She's got a pig back there, a pig that probably weighed 800 pounds. And it's in the corner, it's laying down, and she told me, she's an animal freak, okay? She told me, like, for Mother's Day a year and a half before, her kids answered some ad to buy a potbelly pig. Well, they thought it was a potbelly pig, and it wasn't. It was a real pig. And so they've got this 800-pound pig in my basement, and they're feeding it dog. Well, we get in there, and my son is, I mean, he's serious and whatever. And he's just looking at me. I start laughing. Okay. I did not stop laughing for 20 minutes at least. I turned around and hugged this woman and thanked her, because it had been so long since anybody shocked me like that, I mean, I just thought it was the funniest thing ever. Anyway, it's crazy. Of course, he didn't want the house after that, but I mean, and I made $40,000 just flipping the house to another investor, because if he didn't want it, I really didn't want to deal with them. But that's how that came out.
Right. Yeah. So what happened to the pig?
Well, I heard they kind of keep in touch with me, and eventually, and of course, you know what was funny is the neighbors across the street wanted the pig. They were going to cook the pig. So she wouldn't let them have the pig. And she didn't have any money, because the rehoming service wanted her to pay like a $300 fee to even rehome it. So they kept it, and eventually the pig died. But anyway, that's
wow.
Long past.
Okay. All right, the pig in the basement. That's a good
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Nuts. So how, tell me this, Deena, how did you learn to do what you do?
You know, I guess I don't think that, I don't want to say I don't forget anything, but I've just added to what I know over the years. And it's not something that I think about. It's not something I read about. It's just something I do now. And it's just, I don't know. I don't even know. I've always learned from everything from whatever happened. And like you talk about buying all those law books and learning this and that. And so much of what you want to know is right there at the courthouse. And obviously this is so obvious, but sometimes people need to say something to you in a different manner for you to understand what you're looking at. You know, when you give people a form deed that you're only going to change so much information. Basically, every deed is like that. In every deed, there's only certain information that's going to change: the sellers, the buyers, the price, the dates, you know, the price, those kind of things. And so even if you're not comfortable using a form deed, filling in some blanks, you can go to your courthouse and get copies of 5 different deeds and read these things and understand. You're going to see that same deed over and over throughout those books. And there's only certain things that are going to change: the buyers, the sellers, the dates, the price, the signatures. And all the information you need is out there. And see, there was a time, I don't know, it's been some time ago, at least 10 years ago, that I woke up and I knew for sure that I already knew everything I needed to know to be okay if I would just implement it all. And I mean, that's what I do.
Yep. I know what you're talking about. You know, there's some people that buy every course ever made.
Right.
And try to learn from that. Courses, I mean, they're great as far as step by step. They have limitations because every state's different. And you have to fill in the blanks. There's a certain amount that you can only learn by doing.
Right.
get some pretty basic questions in the forum a lot where somebody will say, where can I get a deed? And the advice I give them is what you just said. Why don't you go to your courthouse and pull a few deeds and look at them, and what you'll find is they're basically the same.
Right.
The formatting may be a little bit different, but they're going to have a grantor, a grantee, a legal description, a notary spot for the grantor to sign, a date, and that's where, I mean, really that's going to be the important stuff. And as far as how, that's going to vary from state to state, whether it's notary acknowledgement, whether you need witnesses and things like that. But that's how you learn.
Right. And so many times, like if someone has gone through all of your course and it's either, it's time to get off the pot, if they go buy another course, they're just going to put off taking action again. You have to, it's fine if you screw something up, just take action. You don't have to know everything today. You don't have to close your first deal all by yourself. I mean, you need to go knock on the door, contact these people. If you're too scared to do that, I send so many. I mean, the only reason I have Facebook is to look people up and send them messages. I don't post stuff. I mean, people are tagging me, they're tagging me, but I don't put my life out there really. And I have that to contact people and say, hey, I've been trying to find you about your house, whatever. Well, then they go in, they look at my pictures, they think, well, she looks harmless. And little do they know I'm a shark.
I know it's the quiet ones you got to watch. There's a line. This is a little risque. I don't know. There's a line from a movie I like, The Devil's Advocate. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. And when Al Pacino's telling Keanu Reeves how you need to operate, don't be so flashy. Don't be the big fish. Be quiet. Be unassuming. He said, be the hand up Mona Lisa's skirt. Just operate, what I mean, in a quiet manner, but get stuff done, and that's how you do it. I don't want anybody to think that I'm the smartest person in the room. Right. I may not be, but I certainly don't want to act.
But if you are, they don't all need to know.
No, they don't. When I would sit in the living room with a seller, yes ma'am, no ma'am. I mean, just yeehaw, Yeah. And but I mean, I know what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? So, right. And that's the way you got to be. People. I don't think people like dealing with folks that act like they know everything.
Right.
So,
right.
Anyway.
Well, when I use what I know, it comes out, it's just very reassuring to the people I'm talking to, because it does sound like I know what I'm talking about when I tell them what's going to happen and what I'm going to do. And I feel like it calms them down and makes them feel safe.
Somebody that can take charge of the situation. Listen, I know exactly what we need to do, and we'll get your situation taken care of. But what you said earlier is absolutely right. At some point, you got to stop buying books.
Yeah.
And just start doing. I know you're in our coaching group, and you may have seen Mark Cool's post over the last month. He just did his first deal. He only got started investing in May, and he just closed his first deal last month, which was a great deal. He got the house subject to. He sold it with seller financing. He made $18,000 up front. He's going to collect $200 or $300 a month in cash flow. And he'll probably collect another 20 or so on the back end. He'll make $50,000 off his first deal. And he got it done in a couple of months, and step by step. He actually just did a podcast with me last week, so it'll be coming out pretty soon. But his thing was hashtag ready, fire, aim. He said, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm getting something done.
Right.
And he made just about every mistake you can make.
Right.
But he got stuff done and made 5 figures on his first deal. And that's what's important. So good for him. And you should go back and look at that stuff. He's a great guy, and I'm really proud for him. So we've been talking for a while now, and I know you're busy doing all this.
I want to welcome everybody to my laundry room, by the way. I'm looking. Hey, at least I knew if I came here, ain't nobody going to come in trying to help me.
laundry room for sure. So, but I know you're out there, you're busy. You got these deals going on and everything. I don't want to keep you all day, but I do have one more question for you. As an experienced investor, out there for 20 plus years, getting stuff done, still doing deals every day, what advice would you have for any new investor who's just getting started?
It's been so long since I didn't know anything. But I mean, I guess basically I do find somebody you trust. I guess if you are listening to this, then I would trust William and I would follow his plan. Because even if you do something different than him, he's not going to give you bad advice. But I would, my whole thing, taking action is just the biggest thing. If you're new and you're listening to this, that means you're at least plugged into his forum. So I guess I'd probably go start knocking on doors that had grown-up yards and ask people if they want to sell their house. And if they do, don't talk too much, but come back to his forum and post what you got and they'll help you. I think that's probably what I do, because I mean, it's likely you got somebody that'll go talk to somebody with them somewhere. I mean, you've got people everywhere. I guess I don't really know, because it's been so hard for me, even just thinking about having my son start into the business. I mean, even with everything I know, it's almost like, really, what am I supposed to do? Write a book for you? I mean, so I handed in your manuals, but they don't like to read. I mean,
I know my wife is all over me to do a digital course, and I'm pretty old school. Like I said, the yellow pads and everything else. When we got started, we bought courses. That's what we did. We listened to cassette tapes and that sort of thing. So she's all over me to do that. But that's what the new people want. They want that digital format stuff. Watch a video and
right,
sort of thing. Absolutely. But I do agree with you. Find somebody that you trust, whether it's a local investor, whether it's a guru, and somehow that term has a bad connotation for people now. But, when I hear that, I say, thank God for the gurus, because if it weren't for those guys, if it weren't for Carlton Sheets and William Bronchick and Ronald Grand, I'd still be working in a restaurant, probably.
Right.
Instead of buying houses, and my life would be very much different. So,
that's right.
Find somebody that you trust. Join your local REIA. And there are going to be people there that you really can't listen to.
We don't even have one of those here. But see, without all that information put out there, I mean, I'd have to have a real job, and my laundry room wouldn't look like this. I mean, my life is what it is because I got hold of enough information to make this life with that information.
You used that information, and that's the key. I've had people in our coaching group before that could tell you 6 ways from Sunday how to do a deal that had never done one.
Right.
They know how to do it, but they have a fear or a lack of the ability to just take action, and they just don't use their knowledge. It's a shame.
Right.
Because the difference that investing, and I know I'm preaching to the choir on this, that investing can make in your life, it's amazing.
Right.
To be able to go out and just do a couple of deals a year and make what the average family income of $52,000 a year, is just working a few hours. Well, Deena, thanks so much for sharing your story, your laundry room, and everything with us today. Like I said, I know you're super busy, so when I can get somebody to take an hour out of their time to come talk to us, I'm very appreciative.
Well, you're very welcome.
That's great.
And I've got lots of stories to tell, so you just call me anytime.
But listen, we'll have to do a second edition and third and so on. So, yeah, right. I'm looking forward to it. I know you got a lot of stories, so we'll have to talk again sometime. But thanks again for coming on.
You're very welcome.
Well, Sub2ers, that's it for this edition of the Sub2Deals Show podcast. You can find the show notes along with a complete transcript at sub2podcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it. I mean, really, we would love it. If you'd subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, it only takes a minute and it helps others discover the show. Finally, if you haven't yet, you can join our free Facebook Subject To group at sub2forum.com. You can find lots more resources to help you grow your real estate investing business at sub2deals.com. So until next time, keep learning, keep talking to sellers, and you will buy some houses.